Hi team, hope you're well. It is warm today, very warm, It's like 25 degrees out there, which for England is baking, sweltering. It is redders out there. So I'm gonna leave these windows down just a crack. My apologies if the traffic noise or the noise of the breeze is a little intrusive. If it gets too much, or there's too much busyness and noise outside, I'll just put these windows up and I'll just bake at 25 degrees for an hour or so. I just got this car back from the garage. The old Corsa here, beautiful car. The old mobile studio that I do a lot of this filming in. It failed its MOT. And it had to have a fair bit of work done to it in order to get it up to that passing standard. So it's been a bit stressful and I'm a bit out of pocket. It wasn't cheap to get it fixed and to get this MOT and its service all done and everything. And I thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to do a little bit of Zen in the field. A little bit of practical application, some advice on the practical application of meditation and spirituality based on my experience. This is how meditative principles, presence, inner peace, tranquility, serenity help me when times are a little bit stressful, a little bit frustrating, and a little bit busy. And this is one of those things because cars need an MOT in order to be roadworthy, and I need my car. So it's not like I have the luxury of just checking out of things completely. This is something that needed to be done. It demanded my attention. And so I believe it's important to ensure that we know techniques and practices in a practical way, in a way that's going to help us when times are hard, times are busy, times are stressful, frustrating. And you might think, is it that big a deal? Like an MOT? Is it that big a deal taking your car to the garage or things like this? These are the sorts of things that happen in our everyday life. Maybe it's the car needs fixing. Maybe there's problems at work, problems with the kids at school, problems in the house, things need doing, things need fixing, that kind of stuff that you would think is just the mundane day-to-day sort of life. But it is important that we stay present and grounded because this prevents the stress from building up in the body. It just allows us to process and integrate the emotions that are running quite high during these periods of time. And if we do so, we find that we can maintain our inner peace, serenity, and tranquility even when times are busy and potentially difficult. Particularly if you've ever suffered with any sort of mental health or emotional health issues, or you're quite prone to stress, quite prone to anxiety, which I am, then you'll know that things like this, MOTs coming up or big bills, you know, big financial setbacks could be coming, or just when things are kind of difficult in the practical world, you'll know how this can trigger anxiety and can cause massive spikes in stress. And so this is just some advice based on my experience about how to apply principles of meditation and spirituality so that we can mitigate some of the damage that periods of stress can cause. And hopefully through this perspective, we can remain grounded and centered in our day-to-day life. And I thought I'd do that by just running through the kind of sequence of events and explain kind of what happened in my internal world whilst these things were going on. Because thankfully, as the stress kind of built up over this whole incident, it's been 3 days of trying to get this whole thing sorted. And finally, you know, thank the Lord, thank Brahman consciousness that I've got my car back. Real happy with that. And yeah, I thought I would just run through a kind of blow-by-blow account of how things were for me during that period and the things that helped during that time. I don't know why this just came to mind, but there's a beautiful quote that comes from military training that says, when you encounter the enemy, you don't rise to the situation, you fall to the level of your training. And that's the first kind of principle to understand here, is that this is why it's important to set the time aside each day to ensure that we are doing our meditative practice, that we are spending intentional time, that we are investing some emotional and spiritual energy into this practice of meditation, finding presence and deeply immersing oneself in the presence of awareness, to recognize that one is the presence of consciousness, and allowing us to disengage from our thoughts and our feelings when we need to. By being able to disengage from our thoughts and feelings when we need to, and doing the meditation to train ourselves to be able to do this, it ensures that the moment we start to notice that stressful thoughts and feelings are rising, we immediately snap into what we trained for. So, as they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy, right? So, let's say we're using sort of stressful life circumstances as the enemy here. When that enemy arises, the stressful life circumstances arise, your brain will be scrambled. It will. You can't help that. That's going to happen. You're going to get caught up in some of the chaos and the turmoil of the external world. Why is that? Because the external world is chaotic and filled with turmoil. It just is. The external world never goes to plan. It's subject to misfortune and bad luck. All manner of things can happen. An almost infinite number of things can happen, which could be terrifying or liberating depending on the way that we see things. But that there, we will term the enemy, stressful life circumstances, chaotic, unpredictable life circumstances, and boom, it happens, because it can happen at any moment. When that happens, that is like being contacted by the enemy, receiving enemy fire, coming under contact from enemy fire. When that happens, blah, our brains are scrambled and we panic. We don't rise to the situation, we fall to the level of our training. So, if we have been spending that 10 or 20 minutes every day in meditation, when the stressful life circumstances happen, you find you snap straight into awareness. You just notice the thoughts and feelings. You notice, oh, hang on a minute, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's worry, there's frustration, there's disappointment, there's anger, or whatever the emotion is. You recognize that, but you go, but I choose to just keep a little distance from that. I'm still going to use those thoughts and feelings to help me orient myself in this situation and make decisions, absolutely. But I'm just going to keep my distance a little and ensure that I have a grounding of inner peace. I'm going to ensure that I'm centered whilst I go through this chaotic circumstance and situation. And to illustrate that, this is the first thing that I noticed during this whole MOT saga that we are thankfully on the other side of now. As I was driving to the MOT test centre, the garage, and this was on Wednesday, it's Friday now, this was on Wednesday, I was actually driving there in the morning, and I noticed as I was driving there that I was remarkably calm. I had the music playing and driving to the test centre, and I already knew, I had this background, I knew there's a bit of work that needed to be done. I'd already told them ahead of time, I'm pretty sure there's a few bits need doing. So I kind of had this inkling it wasn't going to go smoothly this year. But I didn't feel anxiety on a physical level. And whenever I notice this, whenever I have the intuition and insight, oh, hang on, that's interesting. There's no anxiety here. I actually feel quite peaceful and calm. That's when I find it very affirming that all of this meditative practice and everything I've done to recover from anxiety, depression, stress and addiction, everything I've been doing, now I know that it works. It's confirmed. I'm driving to the MOT test centre and it's confirmed, well, I must be doing something right, because this used to really throw me. Certain things like this, having to go and do things like this, particularly when they're ultra practical things like this, that's going to require a lot of social interaction in order to get to the other side of this, that used to completely throw me. And I wonder if you can relate, if you've ever suffered with any kind of anxiety or emotional or mental health issues at all. Now that's really quite something for me, and it's why I'm kind of passionate about teaching meditation and ensuring people are aware that meditation can have a profound, dramatic impact on your life, on your happiness, on your health, physical and psychological. Because I have now experienced this so many times, and I just wish I could bottle that and give it to others so that they don't have to go through unnecessary suffering. So much of our suffering is psychological. So much of it. And it's unnecessary because of that. Because it's psychological, it's unnecessary. The first time that I felt that effect, interestingly enough, this might be of interest to you, because people ask me, like, what in the early days of my transformation, like what actually happened. And one of the earlier experiences, this is in the first year of sorting myself out, I was having cognitive behavioural therapy. It's something you can get on the NHS here, so you can get it on the NHS in England for free. I recommend you check it out. If you live in England, go and engage with the NHS. Some of their services are very good when it comes to mental health. Check it out. Cognitive behavioural therapy was my first in to starting to take a look at my mental health. I'd been doing meditation leading up to that, but this was the first time I was actually going to engage with a kind of a psychiatric counselling. It's not a psychiatric counselling. It's a form of counselling that's to do with observing your thought patterns, which is a lot like meditation. Anyway, I was sat in the office outside, ready to go into my first session, and I thought, hang on, this is strange. I'm usually very nervous. I'm not as nervous right now. It was just a very profound moment. I thought, that's interesting, and I wonder why that is. And then as I was sitting there, just very introspective, very contemplative, I realised that this calmness must be related to the meditation that I'd been doing. It must be, because it was a similar sort of feeling, a felt sense, felt experience. Anyway, so I had that feeling on the way to the MOT. I checked the car in, and because it's going to take at least 3 hours to get the service in the MOT done, I thought, I'm not going to wait in the test centre, I'm going to go for a walk. I usually go and walk up into the town that's nearby. I'll go and grab a coffee and just go and chill and do my Zen thing. I'll go and sit in a cafe and just be very present, and I'm just going to while away the hours just in a very meditative state, in a very meditative space. And had a nice little wander on up to the town and found a nice cafe to sit down and read my Zen poetry book and have a nice little double espresso. And everything was fine, actually. Everything at this point was completely okay. Checking in on that inner world during that time, so this is the Wednesday morning, and everything was, although I was aware, so the anxiety was trying to kind of rise up. There were obviously stressed and worried thoughts that were kind of trying to gain my attention at that point. But ultimately, I just didn't engage with them because I recognized these are not necessary thoughts. The car was checked in to the garage. It's out of my hands now. And when it's out of your hands and there's nothing you can do, you have no control over the situation. What's the worry for? What's the worry about? So I find it quite, I won't say easy, but it's quite simple to recognize those thoughts that are unnecessary. The anxiety, the worry, these are unnecessary thoughts now because there's nothing I can do about this situation. The mechanics are doing their job. I'm going to go have a coffee. And that's the first sort of technique that I'd like to kind of get across here, is always check in with the reality of now. The reality of now. And if you recognize the situation, the car, the MOT, this, that, the other, the finances, all of that, that's all narrative. That's all the situation in the mind. But if you bring yourself into the reality of the situation without any narrative, without any cognition, without any mental images, and instead you're just open to observe the present, external and internal, you realize that the story isn't present in the present. The story isn't there. There's no MOT, there's no car, there's no any of that. In the present moment, I'm just sat in a cafe, reading a Zen poem book, drinking an espresso. That's perfectly pleasant, right? Perfectly nice, perfectly serene and tranquil. So that's where learning the practice and principle of presence actually has a practical application, because now being able to simply be immersed in the reality of now, immersed in the reality of the situation, we find there's nothing to worry about. So that prevents the stress from rising, it prevents the anxiety feedback loop from picking up. If I didn't know any meditative or spiritual practice, and I was entirely mind identified and caught on a stream of thoughts, a train of thoughts, I'd be racing along, constantly worried, thinking there's an infinite number of things that can go wrong with the car, and what am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if it's catastrophic? What if I can't afford the repairs? All of these what ifs, right? All of the what ifs is what causes the stress, the worry, the anxiety. But check in with the reality of now. That's just that little technique that you can practice, and in doing so I could just sit, read the book, drink the coffee, and nothing to be done, no more than that. Serene. Whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera. Now, I then went to go and get a bit of lunch, a sausage roll, and walked around the charity shops, which is something I like to do, to see if I can find Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, because Dungeons and Dragons is dope, cool game, and I look in the charity shops for toys. That was all perfectly pleasant and fun. But herein is where the worry and stress actually started to take a bit more hold, because by that point it was getting to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and usually in the past, when I've gone for an MOT and a service, it's usually done by 12. I check in at 8:30 in the morning, it's usually done by 12. You usually get a message through on your phone saying, car's ready to collect, you're all done. Now I kept looking at my phone as I was looking around the charity shops and trying to scope out any Dungeons and Dragons miniatures that one might find. Couldn't find any, by the way. And kept checking my phone and I was like, oh, nothing yet. Nothing yet, nothing yet. I wonder if you know that feeling. You know that feeling? Just that background level of worry starts building up, a bit of dread. Dread? Yeah, dread, bit of anxiety, because you start thinking, uh-oh. And you just suddenly get quite a deep intuition, an uneasy feeling, where you just think, okay, this has a feeling to it, where this is going to warrant some further investigation. So I gave them a ring, and I couldn't get through. Just couldn't get through. There was no answer at the other end. They must have been busy. And therein is where something a little deeper had to occur on the internal level in order to mitigate the stress that was starting to build up. Because I couldn't at that point just purely remain in the reality of now, because the reality of now actually started to require a bit of action. So although I could stay perfectly present, there's an inevitable level of frustration that's going to be there. Now here's where we're going to get a little deeper here. So just do this with me now. Just breathe. Just aware of the sensations of breathing. Just bring yourself fully into the here and now, just the present, just this. Just a sense of being aware of the breath without any analysis, just pure observation of the sensations of breathing. And just fully here and now. Now we're going to go a little deeper. Time to turn the old windows up there. As that frustration and stress was building up, I tried to just completely check out and get away from it. So this is actually wasn't quite the right approach at that time, and this is what I'm learning. So in full presence and just going to the full Advaita thing of just trying to go purely to consciousness, I was trying to kind of run away from that frustration, and I was in some sense kind of feeling like I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be feeling frustrated or worried, right? Because there's this image that I sometimes have where it's like, no, I'm like a spiritual dude, right? I'm a spiritual dude in a spiritual mood, and I don't get stressed. I never feel worry. I never feel any anxiety. I am a Zen master now. I am a mighty YouTube spiritual guru, and I am no longer affected by the tawdry things of this Maya, by this samsara reality. I'm above all of this now. You see? Spiritual ego building up, right? I became very aware that I had this feeling that I shouldn't be feeling any worry or frustration, and so I was trying to get away from it. But that was actually making things worse. It was making it worse. I don't know how, but it was like, well, because trying to get away from it, it didn't make it go away. It was still there. Bit of frustration, bit of worry. So I realized that was happening and then went towards it. And not really an embracing, because I think embracing's not 100% the right word. It's more of an accepting. It's more of an allowing. Just allowing a natural level of worry and frustration to be there. And that's when I relaxed. Oh, I see. It's perfectly normal to have that feeling. It's not suffering. That's the difference. It's unpleasant. You'd rather not feel those emotions. But you only suffer from the emotion if you resist it, if you avoid it, or you repress it. But the emotion itself is just a sensation. What even is an emotion? Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it a physical sensation? What even is it? Fascinating. What even is an emotion? So I started to use the worry and frustration, the dread. Oh, what's coming next? This is gonna go terribly wrong, as a form of meditation in itself. It's almost like the tantric approach, my Kashmir Shaivism approach. The solution to the pain is in the pain, as Rumi said. Just go so closely towards it that it's no longer a threat, because you accept it so fully. And I was like, okay, right, so I am worried, I am frustrated. And that's a kind of, there's a Buddhist principle where you just kind of repeat to yourself exactly what it is that you're doing or feeling or thinking. So you just be very present, very aware in the moment. And in the moment, that frustration and worry was somewhat transmuted. So I still couldn't get through on the phone, and I thought, right, so what I'll do actually, I'll walk back to the test centre, to the garage, because, well, that way I can guarantee that I'm going to get hold of somebody, and I'd rather be sat in a nice air-conditioned garage rather than walking around in town looking for Dungeons and Dragons miniatures in charity shops. So I also thought it's only going to be another couple of hours or so tops anyway. I can wait out the rest of the time in the garage, in the waiting area, and carry on with my meditation there with some answers about what's going on with the car. Get back in there, and the guy says the car's still having its MOT and service, and it's going to be another 2 hours. I was like, 2 hours? Okay, so about 2 hours. So I sit in the waiting area and just trying to do my meditation thing. But I noticed that there was this persistent level of worry there. And there wasn't much I could do about it at that point. So the very last bastion of defense there was just to accept that this is now a pretty uncomfortable day. And that's it. Now you see, if I didn't know these principles of presence and acceptance and awareness and of consciousness, I'd be stressed out of my mind at that point. I'd be worried, I'd feel very claustrophobic in the garage. I mean, when you don't have your wheels, you don't have your transport. There's a horse going by. I wonder if I can show you. Oh yeah. Huh. Ah. Well done, horse. Do horses need MOTs? I'm sure they have the equivalent. Complete tangent. Love it. So, if I didn't know those meditative practices, principles, presence, acceptance, consciousness, just taking things as they come and trying to just kind of transmute things at this point, then I'd be stressed out of my mind. But thankfully, due to the meditative and spiritual practice, the stress was being mitigated. But notice I say mitigated and not completely removed. I wish it did completely remove any and all stress, worry, anxiety, low mood, everything. Doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. But it goes some way to lessening the impact. Uncomfortable and unpleasant does not mean suffering. Pain is not suffering and pleasure is not happiness. Big clues to our inner peace right there. The other thing I'll start to add in here is this, in the principles of Advaita and non-duality, where we remove the ego, we remove the story about the individual protagonist, the illusory character of being this individual body and mind with the beginning, middle and end to this story, and I am my names and my labels and all of my stories. If I was identified with that ego, with that story, the stress of the situation of being in that garage would have been made 10 times worse by all of the problems that come along with personhood. Such as, I'm such an idiot for not getting my car seen to sooner, or I should have made better plans, I should have planned with a friend to get picked up from the garage, or so they're like the sort of inward-facing suffering that results from personhood, the self-image, the self-narrative sort of stuff. I'm an idiot for not seeing this sooner. I've caused this. This is my fault. Or we could go to the external kind of narratives, which is lots of blame. We could say, you know, if I was very ego-identified, I might say, this is the garage's fault. They're a bunch of idiots. They're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. That would be a way of trying to kind of take the stress that I'm experiencing and putting it onto the external world, trying to put it into the garage. And you see this all the time. When people get stressed out and frustrated and they start yelling at cashiers or waiters and waitresses and managers, and they start getting really angry, they externalize their stress and their worry, and that's reprehensible. That's not a very kind or compassionate way of living your life at all. It's terrible. And it happens all the time. It's become completely normal. But normal is not healthy. Not healthy at all. So by going through the... Just checking in to make sure, this is a technique that we can do to mitigate stress and anxiety, is just check that the unpleasantness that you're feeling, the worry that you're feeling, just check it's not due to your narratives. Because if it is due to your narratives, you can just drop it completely. And that is an element of the psychological suffering that you can just remove completely. It's unnecessary. It has no basis on reality whatsoever. All of that sort of suffering, thinking you're an idiot or thinking the garage is an idiot, is fictitious. It's a story, and a story is just that, a story. It's not reality. So you can let that go. And so sat there in the waiting room, I could just let all that go and get the Zen poem book out and keep on reading. But some frustration was still there. Can't deny that. I just tried to accept it as best I could. But then I didn't really fancy waiting for the full 2 hours, so I went back out for another wander around. But I was starting to get increasingly tired at that point, because I was thinking, hang on, this is an entire day now. This is an entire day that I've wasted doing this. I know it needed to be done, but now this is going to go on. You know, you just know this is the whole day is done now. There's nothing more I can do here. This whole day is done. And I was like, oh dear. So I went out for a bit more of a wander around to kill the 2 hours, came back to the garage, and he said it's going to be another hour. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I just had to accept that I was going to feel a bit uncomfortable, and I was like, okay, but it is what it is. I was trying to make sense of it in some way. Am I being tested? Something along those lines, but in the end I was like, I ain't even going to worry about any of that. Just going to be as I am and trust that everything will work out eventually. Now, one massive positive did happen. A very big positive happened whilst this was going on. Whilst I was sat that time around waiting for the car to be done, a lady came in and said she needed some help because she had a flat tyre, and she was with her daughter, and her daughter was autistic, and you could see that she was getting very anxious and very upset, because this is when especially people who are on the autistic spectrum have interruptions to their routine, or there's a lot of uncertainty. It can be incredibly stressful for them, very disorienting for them, and my heart goes out to them, because you can see how much distress, and you could see how much distress her daughter was in, and the mother was in a bit of a flap trying to get this. She had a flat tire and she was trying desperately to get it sorted, and she was really reassuring her child. And so they came, they got that organised, and then she came to sit down on the chairs in the same sort of waiting area that I was waiting. And she was so supportive of her daughter. It was amazing to witness. Amazing. So this is a huge positive that came out of that day. It was so heartening to see. That was love in action. She was reassuring, she was encouraging, she kept her daughter engaged and entertained and made sure her daughter was comfortable. And also, I have to say, her daughter as well did incredibly well. She was obviously, I don't know what the best way to kind of term it would be, but was severely autistic. Like she was obviously probably quite dependent, I would say, on her mother's care. That's the level of being on the autistic spectrum that she was. And you could see that she was trying as hard as she could to keep herself regulated, to keep herself calm. And she was doing these self-soothing behaviours, they call it, where they sort of rock back and forward a little bit, and she was clearly in distress and clearly agitated. But she was trying to remain calm, and her mother was reassuring her. And it was just such a sweet relationship that they had. It was so compassionate, it was so loving, it was so wholesome, and it just was so life-affirming. I thought, that is beautiful. It was so genuine. A little slice of life right there. And it showed me that although that must be difficult, I mean, that life that I witnessed there must have so many of its challenges. It must have so many difficulties. It must have so many areas where sacrifices must have had to be made and decisions have had to be made, and so much will have to be in place to facilitate that. And it's resulted in a beautiful, loving relationship between that mother and daughter. And I sat there and I could not wish more love, health, happiness and peace to them. And I was sat in meditation, I was trying to radiate peace towards those two beings. And I'll do it to this day as well, and I invite you to do the same. I hope they have peace and happiness. I hope they have health and ease of being. So that was something. I don't know why that struck me as like, that's something I would probably need to talk about, because something about that felt profound. It felt significant. It felt synchronistic. It felt like there was a synchronicity there. I don't really know how or what, but it was beautiful. Not only that, not only was the support that I witnessed there, the love that I witnessed there was so beautiful for them, the garage pulled out all the stops to get that done as quick as possible, because they could see exactly what everyone could see, and that yeah, this is a struggle. This is something this was urgent. This wasn't just any flat tire. This probably needed a bit of this needed some hurry, because she was in distress. And so the garage really prioritised that and made it happen quickly. How beautiful is that? Again, heartening, life-affirming. Looking for the positives in all of this. So I'm not sat there like blaming the garage. I actually wanted to recognise how amazing the garage was in doing that. Incredible. Okay, there's a troop of the Marines train around here on the area that I'm at here. And a troop of Marines is walking by on exercise. They've got their rifles and everything. I would turn the camera around, but I'll probably get in trouble, but whatever. Look at that. They've got their rifles and everything. There's probably some laws about not filming soldiers or something, but There we are. There we go. So we have a horse and soldiers now. There must be some synchronicity going on here today. Whew, warm. Warm, warm, warm. Anyway, gets to the end of the day. We're talking like 4:30 now on Wednesday. And the man comes over and informs me that unfortunately the car has failed its MOT. They've done the service and everything, but they checked out that the door handle that I knew was broken, it wasn't just the latch on the door handle, it's the entire cable. The entire cable on the inside of the door. So that's what was taking the time, is that they had to dismantle the entire door in order to get to the root cause of the problem. That's what was taking so long. There's kind of a spiritual clue in that as well, isn't there? That just struck me. So this is good. We caught one in the field. In the field. Zen in the field, like those soldiers. In the field. Training in the field. That's why we just saw those soldiers. I used that military analogy to start the video. They're training. They're training. You fall to the level of your training. That's what we're doing now in the car. We're training like they're training. You fall to the level of your training. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Wow, beautiful. And then also, so what was the one that I was just mentioning there? I feel like I've kind of lost it now. Whoops. There's a lot of, I feel like I'm under attack. There's a lot of soldiers pulled up around here. This is intimidating. So yes, oh, that was it. So what was taking the time is that they had to dismantle a large part of the car in order to get to the root cause of the problem. Isn't that a very apt analogy for our mental and physical recovery and our spiritual awakening when we're trying to heal and grow and move on in life? We often ask, why is this taking so long? Why does this process take so long? It takes so long because you have to dismantle the entire personality structure. You have to dismantle all of your most deeply ingrained beliefs. You have to dismantle your entire egoic narrative about yourself and the world, to dismantle the whole thing in order to get to the root cause of the problem. In the case of the car, it was the handle, the cable on the handle. Not just the handle itself, but the actual cable. And man, oh man, was that a bit of a kick in the old teeth. What do we got going on now? Let's see if there's any synchronicity on this. Yeah. So we have a van pulled up here. Zen in the field, you know, that was the topic of the day. Zen in the field. We got to deal with situations as they arise. So not only had the car failed on its on the door handle thing, it cost 150 quid just to investigate the door handle. Not even to fix it. It took £150 sterling to investigate what was going on with the broken door handle. And that's what they told me. The door handle is broken. I could have told you that. Saves me 150 quid, but there we go, by the by. Not only that, they had to order a part in, and that wasn't going to get there till Friday. Now, as the MOT had failed, the car's not road legal and I can't drive it out of the garage. That guy's left his van on despite the fact he's gone for a dog walk. How strange. Let's see if we can find any synchronicity on here. I don't think you can quite see the... We have 4 seasons solutions. Heating, cooling and renewables. Well, there's definitely synchronicity with the heating in here. I literally feel like I'm in a sauna right now. It is warm. Cooling, yes please, and renewable, well, spiritual energy is renewable. I was kind of crowbarring that in. Anyway, it was going to cost me a lot of money to get this fixed. Not only was it 150 quid to investigate the thing, it's going to be another 120 quid to replace the cable. A cable. How can that cost £120? When he told me it had failed, I could feel my heart sink. Very powerful energy. So what kicked in there in terms of the meditative and spiritual practice and principle, what kicked in was just, I had to be fully aware that this information had gotten in. Like, I wasn't prepared for it, and I didn't field that energy very well. It just went straight in. It was disappointing. It took my batteries out, and I went into a tailspin because I was thinking, well, how am I going to get home, and how am I going to afford these repairs? And for a brief moment there, I fell into an old mind habit of something called catastrophizing, which is that I turned it into a disaster in my mind. But again, if we bring things into the reality of the situation without too much of the story, it's just another challenge to overcome. Nothing more than that. It took some energy to integrate that information. Okay, right, I just had to process it, made arrangements, booked it in for the Friday. I mean, to be fair, again, look for the positives and the good things in everything. Yes, this is very inconvenient. I've just spent all day waiting. I did kind of feel like they might have been able to tell me a bit sooner, but hey, I guess not. And they could get the part in by Friday. I was like, well, that's pretty quick, actually, like, all told. And I'll just have to leave the car there, and arranged to get a lift home and a lift back. Frustrating day. Now, here's something that I really wanted to emphasize. When I got home, it was probably about 5 or 10 minutes of feeling a bit frustrated and flustered, and then I was fine. It's just like, okay, that's that then. Nothing can be done about that. Everyone did the best they could. It just is what it is. That is what it is. There's no more to it than that. And I thought, this is really interesting. Usually there'd be so much stress and tension in the body. I'd be in a tailspin in my mind. This is how I used to be when I still suffered with anxiety. People don't realise just how physical anxiety is. If you've never suffered with it, you don't realise it's not just worry in the mind. Your whole body is like hijacked. Heart racing, constant mood fluctuation, agitation, restlessness, you can't sit still, all of that, right? But everything was just chill. It was fine. Everything felt in control. Everything felt in hand. Everything felt like it could be dealt with. Just gonna have to move some money around. I'm just gonna have to figure this out, and there's no rush or pressure. There's still time. Let's just get this sorted. Day by day, step by step, we'll just get this figured out. Now that's something very powerful that I wanted to emphasize, because that happened because moment by moment throughout the day, I'd remembered to stay in meditation. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm perfect, some amazingly meditative Zen dude, because I was fluctuating quite a bit throughout the day and failing at times to remain in a very present meditative state. I know, but at the same time, whenever those anxiety spikes were rising, they weren't pooling. Yeah, that's a good word. They weren't pooling. They weren't collecting. They weren't being buried in the body in order to process later. Because that's what, when we have very negative conditioning, that's what we're taught to do. When you have strong emotions, bury them and deal with them on your own time. Not now, right? That's how we're conditioned through poor parenting and poor schooling, basically. You're taught to repress, resist, bury, avoid your emotions, and just deal with them on your own time. But not now. Pretend you're fine now. But all through the day, when I felt off, worried, frustrated, stressed, it was integrated, processed at the time. So that later on, when that whole day was over, the situation was over, there was nothing to process. Nothing had been put on the later base to deal with later. It had already been done. I was free to enjoy my evening. I went to the seafront and had an ice cream. I get a double tub, 1 scoop double choc, and another scoop honeycomb. And they get this really good ice cream around here. It's like from the dairy farm, full fat. Sometimes I get clotted cream on top. Not many people know about that as a topping for ice cream. They're always going for flakes and sprinkles and all of that. No, if there's the option of having clotted cream, try that. I didn't get it yesterday evening because I'm trying to watch my waistline a little bit. One too many cheeseburgers of late, methinks. The shorts are getting a little bit tight around the midriff. But I thought an ice cream was in order anyway. Scranned that. Happy days. Slept like a log. And that, my friends, is how meditative and spiritual practice works in the field, in the practical application. It's all good speaking on how to meditate when you're in a nice, controlled, calm, still, silent room. And it's fine to speak on these broader philosophical, metaphysical concepts of infinite universal consciousness and Brahman and Atman and ego death and all of the good stuff, right? This is all good stuff. It's all cool. It's all going to help us to train that inner peace. But we also need to know we can't be naive about life. We can't be naive about life. We have to accept that as long as the body exists, as long as the mind exists, it will be subject to the chaos, the uncertainty, the unpredictability of life. Sometimes there will be setbacks and challenges. We must meet these challenges with grace. If we do that, we can enjoy total mental health, emotional well-being for our whole lives. The Thursday, so yesterday I didn't even think about it at all. I only picked it back up in my mind today, this very morning, when I was like, let's go get that car fixed. Went along to the garage, said, when's it going to be ready to pick up? It only took an hour and a half. And weirdly enough, I don't know if there's some sort of spiritual significance to this today, but everything's gone incredibly smoothly today. I feel like I've jinxed it now. I shouldn't have said that because everything's going to start going wrong. But things have been a lot smoother today. It's just gone a lot quicker. The repairs happened a lot quicker than expected. They called me on time, like really rapidly, and they made sure to call me. And I'm sure they knocked the price down a little bit. It's a little bit cheaper than they quoted. Still a hell of a setback. I would just started saving up some pennies. And now there's a setback there. But that's just a disappointment and a frustration to just integrate. I'll just have to work a bit harder. And save up a bit more cash to replenish the loss. It happens. The universe will restore your wasted years. And after all that is said and done, we have our pass certificate. So for another year, I don't have to think about it, hopefully. And this car, the mobile studio, is back on the road. So I can do more and more of these videos. Have I gone through everything there? The moment I finish filming, usually either on the drive back or about 5-10 minutes later when I'm making a little cup of coffee, I go, I missed an entire huge thing that I was going to speak about and I completely forgot to talk about it. Every single time, so I promised myself no more on that one. There was something else. What was it? Got it. Whilst I was sat, and this is before, so you remember when the mother and daughter came in with the flat tyre? Before that, when I was sat there just waiting, I went in, I had a profound spiritual experience, just briefly, at one of those Kensho moments. You probably know them. those just whoa, very powerful, profound, but brief glimmers of true experience. And this is what happened. As I was sat there, I practiced one of my own meditations, the empty world meditation, starting with empty room, then going into empty world. I'll put the link up in the card. I'll put a link there. Empty. Sorry, I've just realised how I look like I'm literally cooking here. It's because I am. It is warm. I was sat there waiting. And I went into empty room and then empty world because I could feel the ego was trying to get in and say, you should have sorted this out sooner, trying to give me a hard time about not having a perfectly maintained car at all times, you know. That's one of the very negative ways that I was conditioned, is that anything that was just purely bad luck or misfortune or just one of those things of life was always blamed on me. Like, it's your fault that happened. You should have seen that coming and prevented it from happening. Everything is my fault. I wonder if you can relate. Have you ever received any of that conditioning? That you feel like it's your fault even when it couldn't possibly be your fault? I felt that coming in. So I went into empty world, vanishing. So it's a visualization in which there's nobody there. It's just empty seats, and you visualize the seat you're sitting on. Visualize it in very vivid detail, exactly what it looks like, but if nobody's there. And then you do that same thing for the whole room, the whole building, the whole town, the city, and so on until you get to the whole world. Visualize it. Everything's carrying on just as it ordinarily always does, only now nobody's there. There's just no one there. And it worked. It was like, whoa, nobody's there. And then I got a vague sense of all of the energies. So it's as though each individual being in the building, I could feel their energy, but it's like there was no physical form there. There was no physical form of a human being. It's just, I could get a sense of their energy, what they were about, and feel the variations in each individual expression of the energetic being. It was wild. And that's not all. Then I forgot which one was me. Wild. For a minute there, I didn't know which being to return to. I'd forgotten which one was me. Now, if you've been doing Advaita non-duality for a while, you'll know why that is. Because we're not individual beings with a consciousness that's aware of each individual being. So for a moment there was that true experience of experiencing that, and a recognition, I'm each of these beings. And that was felt. I've only had that experience so vividly a few times, although it's always there. And so it's a sense of, it's not, I say I didn't know which one to come back to. You never do come back to one. It's just you temporarily, it's which one you need to pretend to be again. For a moment I forgot which one I needed to pretend to be. And I remembered to pretend to be this one, the Corin Bryant one, with the Vauxhall Corsa with the dodgy door. Oh yeah, that one. And it all felt completely normal. It all felt completely healthy. It just felt like a normal thing, like I was just watching, because then I was watching me, I say me, watching Corin Bryant sat on the sofa awaiting that repair. And then I was very aware that each individual being has their own struggles, their own stresses, their own problems that they're going through, and I was vaguely aware of each of those as well. And mine was no different from anyone else's. It was all part of the same thing. If we zoom the picture up and kind of took the entirety of the garage there as a mind in itself, with all the and each individual being within that garage is an individual thought within the mind of the garage. That's what it felt like. It's to elevate upwards, to see the whole integrated unit that was going on there. I was just one little element that day. It was coming, going, coming into the garage, leaving the garage, having its time in the sun, having a little issue with the thing and the this and the that, then the mother and the daughter, and all of these things going on, all of these little stresses and strains going on in the mind of the garage that day. That was the experience. But the Corin Bryant body mind was no different from anyone else, and wasn't separate from the working of the garage that day. It all just felt very innocent. It just felt normal. It felt healthy. It just felt normal. It felt like, I've mentioned it a few times about ease of being. It just felt like ease of being. And the worry and the frustration was still there, but it was integrated in the workings of the whole in that moment. Ease of being. So ease of being doesn't mean we don't have to deal with MOTs. I mean, it's not like when he says, Mr. Bryant, your car's failed, it's MOT. It's not like I can say, well, I think you'll find that the car is just an appearance within an illusory reality, my friend, and although you can look at me and see a individual temporary body and mind, the reality is far different, and in fact we are each of us Brahman. We are infinite universal consciousness, my friend. There is no such thing as time. There is no such thing as time or space, and all of these things such as MOTs and money and everything, it's just a delusion, my friend. These are just methods of categorization and measurement, and they are not inherent to reality itself. Therefore, I think you'll find that this business with the failed MOT, I think we can just move that along. I wish it did work like that. It doesn't, unfortunately. And speaking like that will put you on a free ride straight to the psych ward. So it's not advisable. Instead, there's no harm in playing your role. I think that's everything today, team. Thank you so much. Sorry, I wasn't planning on waffling on for so long, but when in Rome, what a warm day that this was. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on the way out. And I hope to see you soon, team. Take care. Be well. And stay present.